Hello. The Israeli army says it has recovered the bodies of 3 more hostages from Gaza killed by Hamas during the attack on the Supernova Music Festival on October the 7th, before their corpses were taken into the territory of Gaza. The Israeli Defense Forces say the bodies of Shani Luke, Amit Buskila and Yitzhak Galantir were recovered in an operation overnight. Well, meanwhile, aid deliveries have begun arriving at a temporary floating pier built by the United States off the Gaza Strip. Now, Israel has come under growing pressure to do more to allow in more relief supplies. The UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak said this first delivery of aid via the pier was, in his words, the culmination of a Herculean joint international effort. From Jerusalem, our Middle East correspondent Lucy Williamson.
Yitzhak Galantir, Shani Luke and Amit Buskila, 3 Israeli hostages killed near the Nova Music Festival on the 7th of October. Their bodies taken hostage and brought back home this week by Israeli forces.
According to the credible information that we have gathered, Shani Luke, Amit Buskila and Yitzhak Galantir were murdered by Hamas while escaping the Nova Music Festival on October 7th, and their bodies were taken into Gaza.
Israel's army is fighting in areas to the south and centre of Gaza and Jabalia to the north, where it says it found this Hamas arsenal with its stockpile of heavy weapons. This Hamas video, released today, weeks after Israel said the area was cleared. In the south, aid routes into Gaza have been largely blocked by Israel's operation in Rafah. The UN says more than 500,000 people have fled, seeking safety, shelter and food. Today, the first test of a new pier and modular causeway built by US and British forces to get aid in. A lifeline for Gaza to relieve the pressure on local populations and distant politicians. UN lorries waited on Gaza's shore to receive the shipment. Temporary shelter kits from the UK, alongside aid from the US and United Arab Emirates.
We welcome it. We hope that it can be effectively scaled up, but it is no substitute for a proper opening of borders. It's expensive and it's inefficient, but we hope that it will work.
But the new pier was little comfort for some of those watching from the shore.
They want to bring us food. They should bring us back to our homes. They should stop the bloodshed. They should come and see how we're living on the streets.
Israel's allies are taking on Gaza's growing humanitarian crisis with a $300 million response that will salve, not solve. Lucy Williamson, BBC News, Jerusalem.
So that's the latest from the Middle East. But what does the future of Gaza look like in the short and the longer term? Well, I've been talking to the Palestinian ambassador to the United Nations, Riyad Mansour, and asked him how he sees the political future of a post-war Gaza. How do you see the future of Gaza? This war will have to end one day. What is the political future of Gaza when the war is over, in your view?
The first thing that we need to do, and that is our top priority, and the top priority of the Arabs, the Muslims, the non-aligned movement, all peace-loving people, is to stop this carnage and this aggression and this war against our people, to save lives, to send food and medicine and water and humanitarian assistance to scale as suggested by the Secretary General of the UN, and to stop the crime against humanity of the forced transfer, and for the Israeli occupying forces to withdraw from Gaza. Once we have these things put in place, we will be able to devote our thinking and our energies into what needs to be done to rebuild Gaza and to put life back together in the Gaza Strip.
But surely you need to be thinking about that now, that future for Gaza. You need to be thinking about that now. We know you, the Palestinian Authority, Fatah, have had talks with Hamas in Moscow about a kind of unified approach. Would you work in government with Hamas despite what they did on October the 7th?
Our government, declared, from the beginning of this aggression that we have one unified, government that is responsible for the affairs of the Palestinian people in the occupied part of the state of Palestine, including the Gaza Strip, the West Bank, and East Jerusalem. And in fact, significant portion of the budget of the Palestinian National Authority is being spent all the time to the employees of the National Authority in the Gaza Strip, and it never stopped, and it continued to take place, including during these 7 months of aggression against our people. So that's in terms of the responsibility. In terms of the details, it is very difficult to put anything in place as long as there is Israeli occupying forces still in occupied Gaza Strip. They need to be removed. We need to assess and evaluate the massive amount of damage to the infrastructure and to the life of our people in the Gaza Strip, and to see how we can mobilize resources in order to be able to implement the monumental task of the government of Dr. Muhammad Mustafa, which he announced in his speech as to the plan of the new government of the State of Palestine as it relates to the Gaza Strip.
Can I ask you about that moment, that extraordinary moment we had at the United Nations a few days ago when the UN General Assembly voted to support the Palestinian bid to become a full UN member, which would effectively recognise ultimately a Palestinian state. Israel reacted with fury. Its ambassador said the UN Charter had just been shredded and that Winston Churchill would be turning in his grave. What did you think of that moment, and what was its significance, do you think?
Winston Churchill would be so upset from the arrogance of an individual representing a government that is committing genocide against the Palestinian people in insulting the Charter. The Charter of the United Nations was created by humanity after the horrors of World War II, and it is the obligation of all member states of the United Nations to honor it and to respect it and not to shred it as he did. And the insult to everyone in the chamber, including the government of the UK, when he addressed all of us as being the enemy of the Jewish people or against the Jewish people. Such behavior should not be tolerated, and those who utter these words are, in essence, are telling us that they do not belong to secure a seat in the General Assembly. All these issues will come in time if that behavior to continue. The United Nations and the General Assembly was responsible for the creation of the State of Israel itself, and they should be grateful for that behavior, not to come and insult everyone and to shred to pieces the Charter of the UN. This is a despicable behavior, and those who commit such behavior should be held accountable.
You just allege that Israel is committing genocide. Israel has denied that emphatically. It says that claim is morally repugnant. Its lawyer at the International Court of Justice says there is a tragic war but no genocide, and that claim is completely divorced from the facts. That's what Israel says.
Well, Israel says many things, that it is divorced from the facts and it is totally isolated as we see it in the Security Council and in the General Assembly. And as to, that the subject of genocide, the ICJ is deliberating on these issues, and it was not accident for the ICJ to order 6 provisional measures to be put in place, and that is mandatory in accordance with all those who belong to the convention in stopping, genocide and against genocide. And Israel did not implement these provisional measures. And now, as we speak, the ICJ is listening to South Africa and to Israel with regard, to revisiting the issue of genocide. And I believe that the ICJ will put in place a new set of provisional measures, and Israel has to abide by them. And the new measures would be related to, among other things, to stop Israel from storming Rafah and committing genocide against the Palestinian civilian population in that city.